Chapter 1169, Klein's Plan. The flashing dark red glow slightly warmed Klein's heart. He felt that he wasn't that lonely, and that someone still remembered him. As the illusory, overlapping sounds of prayers became clearer and clearer, turning increasingly real, noisy, and chaotic, he realized that Sephra Castle was summoning him, and the resonance between the two was growing stronger. After all the members of the Tarot Club had completed their prayers, Klein had a vague feeling that he could enter Sephra Castle at any time, allowing his consciousness to manifest there instantly. However, he was still obstructed by that one last obstacle. This problem was finally resolved after he completely digested the Scholar of Your potion. It was also because of this that he had the opportunity to return to Sephra Castle, before Ammon broke past the obstruction from the god of glory, Bladel. In just 2 short days, all the members of the Tarot Club have prayed. Generally speaking, there shouldn't be a coincidence like this. Some aren't problematic, but there are some that seem to have been affected by the goddess and will. I was lucky enough, so I naturally had a good development. After careful thought, he realized how unreasonable certain parts were, but this was something that could be explained, and there was no need to pay too much attention to it. After changing his seating posture slightly, Klein's gaze gradually darkened. Although he felt that he might not be able to return home, the moment he saw the door of light and cocoons, he still felt that his hopes were completely destroyed upon confirming that this world was his former hometown. The light of dawn was swallowed by the darkness. Back then, using "the fool that doesn't belong to this era" as an honorific name might be a revelation given to me by my spiritual intuition. In the deepest part of my heart, I might have sensed something. Yes, I remember that I transmigrated while I was sleeping. But why was I wearing a t-shirt and loose pants while hanging in the cocoon? Klein frowned slightly as he cast his gaze at the grayish-white fog under Sephra Castle. As he searched for the reason for the fragments of light in the fog of history, he tried hard to recall every detail of that fateful night. Finally, he found the corresponding historical segment. Joe Mingrui, who was wearing a t-shirt and loose pants, set up the luck enhancement ritual before dinner. He took 4 steps counterclockwise and recited incantations like the immortal Lord of Heaven and Earth for blessings. In his memories, nothing had happened back then, but the scene in history wasn't like this. After Joe Mingrui finished his 4 steps and completed the ritual, his face turned pale and his eyes glazed over. Following that, he ate his meal in a daze. He read books, watched dramas, and fiddled with his phone as if he was completing a predetermined program. Finally, Joe Mingrui came to the sink and looked at his lifeless eyes in the mirror. He brushed his teeth, washed his face, and went to bed. During this process, he didn't change out of his t-shirt and loose pants. He covered himself with the blanket and closed his eyes. Before long, an intense light and violent shaking ended the corresponding historical scene. Klein couldn't help but raise his hand and rub his temples. He gave a self-deprecating laugh. So the idea of there not being any changes and everything being normal after the luck enhancement ceremony was simply what I concluded. In actual fact, my body had already experienced certain anomalies. If it were in the past, he would definitely feel horrified and scared about the truth of the matter. However, after suffering from shock so many times, with his world view nearly collapsing just moments ago, such a trivial matter was unable to generate any intense ripples in him. However, after discovering this, combined with the Emperor's transmigration, a result of buying a mysterious silver plate, as well as one of the hanging spirit bodies in the transparent cocoons actually having a cell phone on them, Klein quickly had some guesses about what had happened back then. It should be the owner of Sephra Castle affecting reality, disseminating the luck enhancement ritual, mysterious silver plate, mutated cell phones, and other things. Anyone that obtains them and performs some required procedure would end up being pulled above the gray fog at some point, hanging by the door of light. This was a random selection. It didn't point to a specific target. I don't know if I'm lucky or unlucky. However, why was it named Quintessential Divination and Arcane Arts of the Qin and Han Dynasty? Was it randomly made up by the influenced humans, or was it really passed down from the Qin and Han Dynasty era? It's not that it's impossible. If the when the stars are right prophecy is true, and if it corresponds to the Creator, the oldest one, then he has always been in a deep slumber underground. He was like that in ancient times, a time that was far more ancient than ancient times. As for Sephra Castle, it said that it was a manifestation of parts of his body. This isn't a sanctuary or escape pod. In the beginning, the oldest one was, on the one hand, waiting to awaken and destroy the world. On the other hand, he was trying to influence reality with a tiny amount of constant fluctuations. By disseminating the ritual and making other arrangements, wouldn't that be somewhat contradictory? That prophecy must have been made by the humans that were influenced by him. Klein stretched out his right hand and lightly knocked on the edge of the long mottled table, stuck in a conundrum that was temporarily impossible to answer. Soon, he remembered a sentence and some things. That statement was, "Whatever separates will definitely converge, and whatever converges will definitely separate." Those things were: the ancient sun god, Ammon and Adam's father, deliberately separated his negative personality. Beyonders who were close to the ground or encountered some corruption would gradually form a brand new self. After reaching the moon, Emperor Rosel's personality had changed a little without him realizing it. Many of the 22 Beyonder pathways were conflicting, just like Demoness and Hunter. Perhaps the Creator, the oldest one, was an amalgamation of contradictions, and he could only relieve this problem by sleeping. Klein had a certain guess, but he was unable to verify it. He wasn't even sure if the oldest one, who would awaken when the stars were right, as spoken of in mythical legend in his previous life, was the creator of all things who splintered into everything in present-day myths. This required more clues and more evidence to confirm. He couldn't just rely on his own guesses and imagination. "It's not like I'm a visionary," Klein thought in a self-deprecating manner. He then cast his gaze upwards. It was almost comprised solely of gray nothingness there, with some grayish-white clouds floating there. There are still many things I need to confirm. For example, is that so-called Chernobyl a sanctuary created by humans after the awakening of the oldest one? Or did the Beyonder characteristics of the 22 Beyonder pathways really originate from the oldest one? Another would be the positions of the constellations. Is it actually normal, or is it abnormal now? Does the 1368 apocalypse correspond to the moment when the stars are right? And finally, the origins of the first blasphemy slate and what exactly is on the moon. Thinking of this, Klein suddenly stopped tapping his fingers and softly said, "For example, the hometown of the elves, the legendary Western continent, whether it exists or not, and why can't anyone go there?" The answer to his question was a long period of silence. He slowly leaned back and rested his arms on the armrest. After a few minutes, Klein closed his eyes and had an idea, or rather, he decided. After he successfully revived, he planned on staying in the forsaken land of the gods for some time to seek out some questions. Just as Emperor Rosel had said, many of the answers were in the forsaken land of the gods. Blasphemer Ammon had wandered here for more than 1,000 years to explore the history that surpassed the first epic. Furthermore, if he kept heading east in the forsaken land of the gods, he might reach the legendary Western continent. Klein cast his gaze outside the ancient palace as he looked into the distance. To him, staying in the forsaken land of the gods for some time was also a type of strategy. At the very least, this would attract the attention of Ammon, making him not need to mobilize his avatars in the outside world to search for Jam and Sparrow in Lone or Backland. That would bring great danger to the people that he knew. Thankfully, the avatars of Ammon who knew that I'm soft-hearted had been wiped out. The corresponding information was also not propagated because of the existence of concealment. If not for that, Ammon might end up directly using the lives of Benson, Melissa, Leonard, and Miss Justice to threaten me. I don't even dare to think of the outcome. Heh heh, the king of yellow and black who wields good luck has finally shown its powers. Phew, even if I want to leave the forsaken land of the gods, I don't have a solution now. I have to barge into the place where the dark angel is sleeping. Klein shook his head and felt that even if he could resurrect, he would be facing all kinds of dangers. No matter how he thought about it, a scholar of yore wouldn't last long if he were tracked by a king of angels. The key to the matter was that the Evernight goddess was still digesting the uniqueness of the death pathway. She could only spare a limited amount of power for infiltrating the forsaken land of the gods. Once the Angel of Time, who wielded the authority of error, was prepared, it was nearly impossible to accomplish what had happened today. On the one hand, I have to seek help from other possible existences. When I successfully revive, I will attempt to use my marionette to recite the honorific name of the Lord of Storms, Eternal Blazing Sun, and the God of Knowledge and Wisdom. Let's see if they have any means to descend into the forsaken land of the gods. They had fed on the ancient sun god back then, so they definitely do not wish for Ammon to obtain Sephra Castle. On the other hand, since the Scholar of Yours potion has been completely digested, I'll have to consider becoming a miracle invoker. As long as I have an angel status and become a complete mythical creature, my situation will be much better. At the very least, I'll be able to withstand a wave of Ammon's ravings when facing his true body. Klein decided to use the medium to spy on the terrifying maggot cluster on the main peak of the Hornisus mountain range once his spirit body recovered. From there, he could obtain the knowledge corresponding to a miracle invoker. It was highly likely that it was the half-fool of the Antigonus family. After considering his future plans, he looked around and answered the crimson stars one at a time. The tarot gathering will proceed as usual today. He wanted to see if Ma'am Hermit, Mr. Hanged Man, and the others could provide him with inspiration and allow him to be revived far away from Ammon. Of course, it was necessary to use an ingenious excuse. After responding, the world above the gray fog became extremely quiet again. Klein sat at the seat of the fool, temporarily with nowhere to go. After a moment of silence, he leaned forward slightly and used his right hand to support his head, looking straight ahead. On the long, mottled table, a variety of delicacies and exquisite candles appeared. As for the high-back chairs around it, they became even closer in style to the current times. One figure after another appeared. One of them was an elderly man with a loud voice and silver strands in his black hair. Another was a woman who was nearly 50 years old. She had an Asian face with short hair that only reached her ears. Some of them were young men who were playing with their phones and enjoying the sumptuous food, while others were young ladies who were laughing and joking. Behind them, new figures appeared one after another. It was the gray-eyed Dun with a receding hairline and Dolly with her blue eyeshadow and blush. With a smile on their faces, they surrounded the long, warm table surrounded by candlelight above the grayish-white fog. They chatted happily and commented on the delicacies from time to time. Klein maintained his expression and posture as he propped his hand on the side of his face and silently watched this scene in stillness for an extended period of time.